So how is Pitbull, of all people, connected to this billion-dollar fraud scheme? Well, it all starts with this guy. His name's Jeff, and Jeff is 36 during this time, living in California, and the dude just fails at a lot of things. Like, he's had multiple businesses fail, he's behind on his mortgage, creditors are suing, he's even tried being a drug dealer, but that fails too. But then, one day in 2008, he's talking to his neighbor about solar panels, and through that conversation, he gets a legitimately good idea. What if he could bolt the solar panels to a trailer, so you'd have like a mobile power source? It would look like this, just a trailer with solar panels on it. And so he builds it using information he found on Google. And he creates a generator that's just a trailer with solar panels attached, and he applies for a patent. Like, this could be a billion-dollar idea. Here's the problem with this billion-dollar idea, though. Jeff, the ex-meth addict, doesn't really know what he's doing. He builds this mobile generator thing and, it looks good, but it only kinda works sometimes. Like, they break down all the time if you can even get them working at all. But whatever, that isn't gonna stop him. He starts a company called DC Solar. He is gonna sell these things. And so he gets a business loan and he hires a company to market his invention. And all this works, and he starts to get a bit of traction. A couple of years later, in 2010, Jeff finally hits the jackpot. He discovers something that's going to change his entire business. A few years before this, the Bush administration had enacted a program that gives big tax credits to big corporations who invest in green energy, aka solar power and stuff. So Jeff creates a business model that allows these companies to invest in the generators he built so that they can get a tax break. And big corporations, they're greedy as hell. Like, they don't care that his janky-ass generators barely function. They just want to purchase or lease them so that the government will give them a tax credit. What that means is Jeff can continue to make a subpar product that barely works and make a ton of money off of it. And that's exactly what he does. And he gets a bunch of contracts going. And by 2011, he gets a life-changing deal. Sherwin-Williams, the huge paint company, leases $29 million worth of generators from him. And again, they don't even want the generators, they just want the tax credit. So Jeff, he doesn't have to do shit, and he just made $29 million. Now at this point, he could use some of this new money to go out and hire like a bunch of engineers to make his generators actually function. But, of course, he's not gonna do that. Instead, he goes and spends the money on some dumb shit. But we'll get to that. Now, as part of his deal with Sherwin-Williams, they get to inspect the generators for quality, which Jeff's generators, they're not gonna pass inspection. Come on, they suck. So he pulls this whole scheme where he tells his team to put the working generators at the front of the line, and they put the busted-ass ones that don't work at the back of the line. So that when Sherwin-Williams inspects them, it looks like they all work great. But whatever, all these companies want is the tax credit anyway, so no one suspects Jeff is doing anything shady, and he's gonna coast on this success for a while. But here's the thing though, all this money he's making, it ends up not being enough. His shady-ass business is gonna crash unless he gets more. So he turns his solar panel trailer business model into a big Ponzi scheme, where he uses the new investors' money to pay off the old investors' leases. And this works for him too. In fact, it works really well. And over the next 3 years, he sells 1,200 of his shitty generators for $150,000 a piece, making him $174 million. A lot of which feeds back into his Ponzi scheme. And by 2014, a regional bank wants to buy millions of dollars worth of generators from him. But in order to do that, he needs to fake a contract with T-Mobile. So he ends up faking a contract with T-Mobile. It's all fraud. But again, this works, and he keeps getting more and more contracts. He gets a contract with International Speedway Corporation for $150 million. He gets a contract with Geico for $1.2 billion. $1.2 billion. So now Jeff's company, DC Solar, is a $1 billion company. propped up by a Ponzi scheme based on a product that doesn't even really work. And it's all because these fucking corporations aren't looking into his product because they just want those sweet, sweet tax credits. So, what does Jeff do now that he has $1 billion company? Well, of course, he buys himself a bunch of shit. Of course! Like he buys a bunch of houses, like this house for $1.4 million, this house for $2.5 million, these 2 condos for almost $4 million, this whole ass apartment building for $3.5 million. Dude buys 32 properties. And not only that, he buys 150 classic and luxury cars. 150! What do you even do with that many cars? He also buys a whole-ass semi-pro baseball team. He also sponsors a car in NASCAR. Like, that's his company right there, DC Solar. He also throws these crazy expensive company Christmas parties for his employees, paying top dollar for live performances. He even gets rapper-singer Pitbull to headline one of these parties. Like, here's a picture of Mr. Worldwide himself performing at one of these parties. But here's the craziest part of Jeff's scams. Even the U.S. government falls for it. In 2016, the Transportation Secretary chooses Jeff's company for some government contract that they're working on. And I don't know how Jeff plans on pulling this scheme off, considering his generators don't really work, but I don't know, I guess he's gonna try. Regardless, bro has everyone fooled. And if that isn't bad enough, Jeff makes it even worse. He decides to start lying and faking the amount of generators he has. Because remember, when these companies buy them, they aren't checking to see if the generators work or if they even exist. They just want the tax credits. So these busted-ass generators are just sitting in Jeff's warehouse, I guess. And in 2017, he only has 6,000 generators available, but he sells 17,000. So now he's selling inventory that doesn't even exist. But I guess it doesn't really matter because dude has $1 billion company and more cars than he could ever drive, and he even has the government fooled. Until... Okay, here's the thing about Jeff and his company. Jeff obviously doesn't work alone. His company's fully staffed, like he has employees. And his employees can see that the company is selling generators, yet it has stopped building generators. So how are they selling something that doesn't exist? And at some point, one of their employees quits, and they go straight to the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, and they report Jeff and the company. So of course, the SEC starts investigating, and eventually the FBI gets involved. And in 2018, boom, a ton of federal agents swarm his company headquarters while a SWAT team busts into his home, and bam, they arrest him. Here's a picture of him in real life.
A Northern California couple pleading guilty to a massive Ponzi scheme.
So over 8 years and 34 deals, he scammed customers out of almost $1 billion. And for that, he takes a plea deal and he's sentenced to 30 years in prison. And his wife is actually involved too, and she gets sentenced to 11 years in prison. And what's crazy is one of Jeff's very last tweets is him celebrating Pitbull, of all people, playing at one of his parties. And thank you to Leonardo.ai for sponsoring this video. If you want to make badass art for your videos like this, or like this, or like this, then sign up for Leonardo.ai. So this wannabe TikToker is now going to prison for life. Now his name's Mohammed, and Mohammed is 26 during this time, and he works in London as a delivery driver for a kebab restaurant. And bro loves to make TikToks, mostly just videos of him acting like a goofy ass and doing whatever the hell this is and whatever the hell this is. Yeah, it seems like he aspires to be an influencer. But one day in 2021, he's at the kebab restaurant, and he meets this woman, Louise. And Louise is 71, she's a businesswoman, and she eats at the restaurant a lot. And soon she becomes friendly with Mohammed and this other guy who works at the restaurant, Al-Jundi. And Al-Jundi is 23 and he's a cook at the kebab place. And bro is kind of a sketchy dude, like he's always trying to con people. And over time, Mohammed and Al-Jundi start to notice Louise got money. Like, she's kind of rich. She owns a few super nice properties in London worth 4.6 million pounds, or about 6.1 million US dollars. And she really wants to sell these properties so that she can give the money to her adult children. And Al-Jundi and Mohammed learn this about her, and they're like, jackpot! And they decide they're gonna not only scam her, but murder her. And so, over the next few months, they spend time becoming friends with her, particularly Al-Jundi. And Al-Jundi convinces Louise that he is this wealthy businessman, a high-ranking property developer, who is also a chef at a kebab restaurant. I don't know actually how that works, but over time, he convinces her that he works in real estate and that he wants to help her out. Specifically, he tells her that he has this super rich girlfriend who would love to buy her 2 London properties off of her for way above market value, and that he wants to do it in such a way that she won't have to pay taxes on it. And Louise is like, sounds dope! And she goes and she tells her family and friends about the deal, and her family and friends are like, no, this all sounds very shady. But, unfortunately, I guess Louise isn't hearing them. For some reason, she trusts Al-Jundi. So Al-Jundi tells Louise that she first needs to transfer the properties to him and put them in his name, and he'll take care of the rest. And if she does that, she will eventually get this big lump sum of cash. Then Al-Jundi goes to hire a lawyer to help him prepare this paperwork. And the lawyer looks at all this and he's like, nah, bro, you're obviously scamming this woman. In fact, several different lawyers turn him down because they can see this whole thing is sketchy. But eventually, he does get the paperwork done. And before the deal is finalized, he talks Louise into giving him the keys to one of the properties. And immediately, Al-Jundi lets Mohammed move in there without Louise's knowledge. And this is great news for Mohammed. Like, he moves in and he starts living rent-free. He starts making videos in this place, like showing it off on TikTok like he owns it. But here's where things get dark. These idiots think that if they murder Louise, that they can then permanently own her 2 houses. So, a few weeks later, Al-Jundi sets up a meeting with Louise at one of her London properties to finalize their deal. He says there'll be a lawyer there, and his rich girlfriend who wants to buy the properties will be there, and they'll close this deal and be done. And so Louise shows up, and of course there's no lawyer there, there's no rich girlfriend there, only Mohammed, Al-Jundi, and this other girl they've been hanging out with. Her name's Maria. Maria is their friend and she appears in Mohammed's TikToks sometimes. And so anyway, Louise shows up and they all chat for a bit, and then Al-Jundi and Maria leave, and Al-Jundi takes Maria to a local jewelry store, and I guess he buys her some jewelry or something, and then I guess he drives her home. But what he's really trying to do is create himself an alibi for this murder that's about to happen. Meanwhile, Mohammed is still at the house with Louise, alone. And he waits until she isn't paying attention, and then he grabs a hairdryer, and suddenly, bam! He starts strangling her with the cord, and she tries to fight him, and she struggles, but it's no use. Mohammed is way stronger, and unfortunately, he unalives her. Then, Al-Jundi arrives back at the property where Mohammed is. Then he and Mohammed leave, and they go to the kebab shop where they work, and they pick up some cleaning supplies. And this is actually security footage of them outside the restaurant. Then they go back and clean up the crime scene. They wrap Louise's body in a duvet, and they dump her into one of those wheeled garbage bins. Next, they cover the body in the can with leaves and lawn clippings. Then they get Louise's phone, and they start pretending to be her, and they send texts to Louise's family and friends, telling them that I'm totally fine, and I've decided to go to China, but I'll be back soon. They're obviously trying to explain her sudden disappearance. Now, at this point, they have to get rid of Louise's car, too, her black BMW, because it's evidence. And so Mohammed puts it up for sale on Facebook Marketplace, and he sells it for way under market value, so it sells fast, within like 2 days. And then he takes that money, and he goes and he buys a bunch of new clothes and and then he makes TikToks of himself showing off those clothes. Did bro really just unalive someone and then buy himself a Calvin Klein fanny pack? Anyway, not to mention, if you look at the background of this TikTok, this one in particular was shot at Louise's property after she was murdered. Now that will obviously come into play later. Meanwhile, Louise's family is freaking out, like she's missing. No one has seen her for a few days, which is very unlike her. And the texts they're getting from her phone are kind of weird, like she's saying she's going to China? Not only that, these texts don't sound like her at all. Louise is 71 years old. These messages feel like they were written by a teenager. So immediately, her family knows something is up. Now, at some point, someone goes to the police and reports Louise missing. Probably her family. And so, police start investigating. And of course, one of the first things they do is they go to the property she owns to see if she's there. And so they go to this property that Mohammed has low-key been living at this whole time. And so police see that he's living there and they're like, I thought this place was supposed to be vacant. And they end up searching the house and they find some pieces of evidence, including a sweatshirt with blood on it. And they take it and they get it tested for DNA, and guess whose DNA they find on it? Louise. Combine that with TikToks Mohammed posted of himself dancing outside of her house after she was murdered, and now Mohammed is a suspect. And police know that Mohammed and Al-Jundi are friends, so they go and they search Al-Jundi's house. And there they find the wheeled garbage bin where the guys had dumped Louise's body. Al-Jundi had moved it there from the crime scene, thinking that no one would find it. Not only that, the day after the murder, Mohammed was giving Maria a ride, driving her home, and his dumb ass confesses to her by joking about it, like, oh, I can't believe we really unalived that lady. So when police question Maria, of course she's like, yeah, he was joking about murdering that woman when he was driving me home the other night. And so, bam, they arrest Mohammed. Here's his mugshot. And also, bam, they arrest Al-Jundi too. Here's his mugshot. And they both go to trial, and they're both found guilty, and Mohammed gets sentenced to life in prison, and Al-Jundi also gets sentenced to life in prison. Good.